under the Delta. So, and then to answer any questions that you all may have today as we're doing this work. And I'll let Cass and everyone on my team go around and introduce themselves to you. So if you don't know them, you can get to know them as we're starting to build and rebuild relationships. So I'll start with Sherry.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Santabanez, and I am the Serena support person. So if you have any questions or needs that you need Serena included in, feel free to email me or call me. I am happy to assist in any way I can, and I will be helping Cass and her team in any way I can if as they need it too.
Cass.
Hi, everyone. I think most of you have met me before. I'm Cassandra Furter. My pronouns are she, her. Been with ELD for a little over 7 years. And so have kind of a broad understanding of all the programs and things that we're trying to accomplish for children and families in Oregon. So this opportunity to become the coordinated enrollment manager is just really exciting. And Mel Hannah is going to be with me as my teammate. And one of the things that we're really committed to in this new space, moving over to Serena's team, is one, making sure that our cohort meetings are all set up out in the field in May so that we can start to meet everyone and learn a little bit more about the partnerships that we have with all of you and how we can better support from a technical assistance standpoint. Also, we have a dedicated inbox now that we will be sharing that information with you in just a few minutes. But that's a place that you can direct all of your emails about coordinated enrollment, all your questions. We're committed to getting back to you between 48 and 72 hours with an initial response so that we can keep some of these questions rolling that you have and keep that TA moving across our systems to all the programs at the division, soon to be DELC. So we're really excited about that opportunity to work with you in that way, a little bit more improved in terms of communications. And then also lastly, one thing that we really want to be concrete about is listening to what your needs are, making sure that we understand what it is that we're trying to help you accomplish. And if you need something, that we're there to help. And that means that it's either myself or Mel. And if for some odd reason it's beyond that, then we contact Serena and we keep it moving. So I'm really excited about the opportunity working with you in this new role for the ones that I have worked with before. And for the new people, I'm really excited for this chance to get to meet you as well. Mel's going to go and introduce herself, and then we can carry on unless Serena has any other questions. Again, thank you, and looking forward to working with all of you on this important work. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mel Hannah, and I am the Coordinated Enrollment Specialist working with Serena and Cass, and I am so very, very excited to get to know each and every one of you and to be able to work alongside of you and carry this body of work forward. We have some great work to do in front of us, and Cass and I have just been meeting, and we're very, very excited to meet in person and put our heads together and get to know all things coordinated enrollment and include you and move forward. So please, I just ditto what Cass said to everything. We really have some goals that we're setting forth in front of us. And one of them, the first and foremost, is communication. And so we welcome you. We will talk a little bit more about that later, but I just am very, once again, happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
One other thing that I wanted to mention real quick is that I did hit the record button because I understand that we did schedule this meeting kind of toot sweet, and I wanted to make sure that we were recording it so that folks who weren't able to come today could really hear the message of welcome and that we're here to help. and some the screen shares of our contact information. So thank you for that in advance.
I know I mentioned that we're going to be coming out to meet with you all in May. We're going to start our, I'm calling it a tour, a get to know you tour, a meet and greet tour. So we want to make sure that we get around to everyone and not just do one and done meetings, but make sure that we're out there more often. And also we want to hear from you. What are some of the gaps in services that you all see, or if there's some needs that we're not meeting and how we can meet those needs? And we want to have honest and direct conversation. I like to be very direct, and I want folks to be direct with me too. If there's something we're not doing, please let us know about it so that we can make any changes or adjustments that we need to make. We know that we don't have a state where we can just do one size fit all. We know that each one of your regions are very different. And we want to be able to, we want to acknowledge that and also make sure that our work reflects that and what we're doing. We also just added, we just completed filling all the positions on our DEI team. So we have Juliet Valdez as our DEI director, and we have Kofi Desu, who will be working on trainings. He was originally with the city of Portland, and Juliet was originally the affirmative action manager for DAS and for the state. And so there's a lot of changes going on, but we're hoping that they're great changes and great opportunities as we move forward in the work that we're doing. Any questions that you all have for me or the team? I'm always available, but I want to be here to answer any questions that you might have. And I know Renee said that there were some questions that folks had, so I want to make sure that I'm answering them.
Hi there. So this is Molly. I'm down in Southern Oregon. I have some questions related to the manual guidance that came out. Could I go ahead and throw those out there?
What was it about, Molly?
The coordinated enrollment, the new manual, the revised manual that came out that we are supposed to use for the upcoming enrollment season.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest and say that I haven't seen it yet. So, but I don't know if Cass and Mel have seen it. Have you all seen it?
I know that Mel has. I have not seen it yet, but I'm willing to take the question and help you get an answer.
Awesome. Okay, so we are just working on getting our instructions for families finalized so we can get those translated, so we can get, you know, all those things in place. And there were some changes to what we can take for eligibility. So changes as far as families who are experiencing homelessness. In past iterations, they were exempt, did not have to provide proof of address, of course, and that was built into the certificate of eligibility. This section has revised language on page 16 saying that they now have to fill out an address supplemental form. That form asks for them to declare a physical address, and it doesn't have changed language to support that use for families experiencing homelessness. So, and then the little line about not having to collect anything from homeless families is still on the certificate of eligibility. So I just wanted clarity. Do we have to have homeless families provide us with additional documentation, or are we following that certificate and they're still exempt from that piece?
Let us find out and get back to you so that way we can get you a corrected answer, and we can have and then Cass or Mel can send it out to you all so everyone can get that question answered. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, and I do think that that supplemental form, like the language would be awkward and hard for those families because it's kind of the language speaks to families that have a physical address, just nothing to verify that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece was there was some change to the section on benefits that we can use. So bottom of page 18, it kind of mentions if a family has ERDC, SNAP, or WIC, that we would need to verify their income using other means to verify that they're below 200% FPL. So many of our families use SNAP, just like our Head Start partners can now use SNAP. So proof of SNAP, I feel like for families receiving benefits is what we receive most. So I just wanted to get clarity that there's another phrase down there that says, if the income information indicates, or the benefit information indicates that they have $0 SNAP benefits in their letter, then that could indicate that they're over 200% FPL. So I just want to clarify that we can still use SNAP. so long as it doesn't state that the family receives $0 in SNAP benefits. Because if we have to ask those families to then give us income, we're not aligned with Head Start, and that is so much extra work for those families, and it basically means we can't use SNAP.
Okay.
Does that make
Molly,
sense?
Can you give us a chance to read the book since we just took over this week
Sure.
and we're still getting a lot of information, and give us about a week to get back with you on this one, since we have to update ourselves on all the things that the new book, and seeing what you all have already done with coordinated enrollment. And I know there was a question in there about how we're going to be working with Preschool Promise. We're going to be having meetings with the teams on a weekly basis, with Gwen's team. And so we will definitely be working across those areas. We are breaking down the silos. And so that we will all be working together to make sure all your questions get answered. And we're also, I know there was a Preschool Promise grant that we were coordinating enrollment was working with Gwen's team on, the programs team of Preschool Promise. And so we'll have all that. And that way we'll be able
Awesome.
to answer your question.
Okay, and I don't mean to blindside anyone. I just know
Oh, no,
our
not
little
at all.
clock is ticking, and we're like, oh no, we need to know what's going on so we can take those next steps and start working with families. So
Yeah.
thanks for noting that. I have another list of questions, but I don't want to hog up all the time. Did anybody have anything else?
No,
Molly, feel
again,
free to write those questions to me in an email, and we'll make sure and get those documented. One of the things that Mel and I were talking about that we'd like to do is kind of create one of those FAQ opportunities. So as these questions start coming in independently, that we would have a mechanism to report back to this group, like what those questions were and how we responded to them, so that we can all keep that same level of communication open and help each other in this work.
Okay, did you say there was a repository and a link to that repository to build?
We're starting
FAQ?
it. We'll send it
Okay.
out, but if you just send them to us in the coordinated enrollment email, which we'll share, we have a slide for that at the end of this, and then you can send those into that. So that's where we'll collect them to begin with. And then we'll get the answers and share them back out right away.
Okay, I have a few others I wanted to make sure I call out on this call, but I'll
Sure.
let Sky has her hand up, so I'll wait.
Okay, Sky, you go first, and then we'll let Molly back on.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I had similar question to Molly about SNAP benefits. In general, Molly had emailed everyone, I think it was Molly, and said, will there be some sort of an informational session or a training, a meeting where ELD staff will go over the changes to the manual for this year? Because we had been sort of given the impression that there wouldn't be many changes this year. And it's true, the application does look largely the same, but there is the change to WIC, potentially to SNAP. I noticed a change to the way we're calculating household size when there are 2 households. Molly brought up the housing instability, documentation. So I just think it's worth not only sending it out, but actually having a session where, staff go through those changes so that all the coordinated enrollment hub staff across the state get that information, have a chance to hear the explanation about why those changes were made, clarify, just because some of the language in the manual can be a little short and could be open to interpretation different ways. And then I also just want to say I'm very glad to hear that it sounds like you all are moving to more of a live document with FAQs, because that was something I had asked for in the past, was rather than having static FAQs that are sent out with different dates of updates, and then we have to comb through our emails to try to find the one that talked about the specific question that we have. I would really rather see a live document where we all can submit questions that are visible to all. And there's a status, like this is under advisement, or it's in review. This has already been answered, and here was the answer. Because currently the system that we have, or that was set up a few months ago, was we were supposed to submit all of our questions through a form. But then I don't know what other questions other CE staff at other hubs have asked. I don't know if they all are struggling with the same issues that we are, and I might want to follow that answer as well. Or, they suggest a question that I'm like, oh, that didn't even occur to me, but that's a great question too. I want to know what the answer to that is. So exactly. So there's just not that duplication. So if it could be, I had said, maybe even just a Google Doc that's constantly being updated, and there are different versions, but that way it's one place to go for all the questions and answers. That would be ideal. So thank you for working on that.
Can I ask a quick question too? So I think we should put together, because it sounds like there were some changes. So would the 1st of May be too late? Because we're April's here, right? So what about the 1st week of May to have that meeting, so that way we can get caught up on everything, and that gives us a chance to get caught up, and we can give you guys complete and concise and intentional answers. Does that sound okay?
I mean, yes, I will take any meeting to get
Okay,
answers
or
and-
training.
Exactly. I'll go to any meeting. The sooner the better, I guess I would say, just because
Okay.
it sounds like folks are creating their instructions for families. But then there's also the issue that we're really trying as much as possible this year to align with our Head Start partners. And they're
Okay.
already taking applications and processing families. So the sooner that we can tell families, hey, you're not going to be able to use WIC to qualify anymore. You're going to have to submit the pay stubs or the income tax return.
Yeah, and some of those questions we can get, some of those questions like that, we can send to you right away. And once we
Great.
get the answer for you. How about that? And then that way we can go over everything and sit down. We can either do it in person or we can do it in Zoom. We can do a hybrid. And so we can do it in Salem, or we can do it someplace that someone wants to open up their spot for us, or where you all are having meetings already, we can just come in on another meeting and just maybe extend that. So let's just be creative and we can get that done. I like to get stuff done, so that's what works for me. So
Me too.
and I was gonna say, does anyone have any more questions for me? I'm on vacation, and if you don't have any questions for me, I'm just gonna hop off the call, and Sherry doesn't have to give me that look that I'm on vacation and I need to take vacation.
That's right. And I want to be real clear about the clarification. It sounds like there's a coordinated enrollment manual, but these changes might have been in the preschool promise manual, enrollment manual. So we'll be taking a look at both of those. Thank you, Serena. And figuring out like what those two documents are, if they are different. So just to be sure that we're clear. I know there's different pieces of guidance for both preschool promise and coordinated enrollment. So I'll be working swiftly to go through those. So are there any other questions? It looks like Molly, you have another question, right?
Does anybody else have their hand up? Because I can wait. I know I've had some airtime. Otherwise, I can go for it.
Begonia has a question.
Serena, thank you so much for seeing us today and for opening the floor for us to chat with you so openly. And I just have a question about the meaning of coordinated enrollment. So for several years, it has been discussed that will also include other publicly funded programs. So it seems like still is very aspirational. So what is your idea about how soon that thing could actually be a reality, if it's going to be a reality?
Well, Begonia, Serena left the call just a minute ago. So I will track that question, and it'll be something that I ask her about in terms of like a time frame that she's envisioning, her and Alyssa. I do believe that the coordinated enrollment would include the other publicly funded programs. I mean, that is the vision, that we would have all that under one thing. So yes. But the time frame question that you have is one that I don't have an answer to. So I will ask Serena and get back to you on that and this group. And the one thing I wanted to also let you know that Mel and I worked on last week to really be as accountable as we can to this information and sharing and keeping things transparent as we learn across programs and teams and our partners externally, that we'll be able to meet with Serena once a week for the next 8 weeks as we build this work out. And the one thing that we did was we created a weekly memo where we'll be taking information that we get from reaching out with all of you and working with you and hearing what your needs are, putting that back into the memo so that we have a constant tracker of what information is being asked and when we're getting back, so that we can continue to strengthen that loop of communication It seems like a lot of times things get mentioned or said that we're going to do it, and then something shifts or somebody else comes on board, and then we lose sight of that at times. So to rectify that situation, that was the one thing that Mel and I thought would be useful, was to be able to do this in memo form so that we can use a tracker. And again, reiterate how we'll be working to get those FAQs in a shareable space so that all of us can be learning from each other as we go down this path. So Begonia, I will get back to you. And then Molly, are you ready for your other questions?
I am, and I know that you may or may not be able to answer these, and I might have to recapture them in an email after the fact, right, until the FAQ comes up.
Sure.
But I was wondering about if you know what the timeline for processing change requests might be, if we have programs that might be asking to move slots or locations. Those are kind of time-sensitive details that we need to have. We need to know who's put in a change request and if it's been approved. So just wondering what that process looks like on the ELD end, and if we can be looped in on any slot movement in our hub region. I know of a couple programs, but I know that sometimes those requests go to you and they may remember to alert us and they may not. So kind of need to know where our slots are.
Okay. So, and when you say that they reach out to me sometimes and not to you, is that something that—
I'm sorry, I mean ELD, Preschool Promise, whoever is managing those change request forms that go through the Preschool Promise SharePoint site from providers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I know last year about this time, there was a criteria for continuation that was made known. Do you know if that is a process that's going, but you know what I mean? If that's been identified again for this year and what that criteria will be?
I don't, but I will write this down and Mel and I will get to work and find you an answer.
Okay, and I think maybe the last other thing I wanted to throw out was that we have each week when we do those vacancy reports, we have a couple of programs that are struggling to hold families and appeal to families. And I'm putting in the amount of turnover that we've had at some locations. And I'm just wondering, I know in the past, slot reallocation, you know, was a part of the conversation for coordinated enrollment. So we looked at family demand and interest, and slots kind of moved to meet the demand of families. These programs are in a community that has a big wait list for other sites, and families just aren't interested in moving around. And so I'm just hoping that is going to be given some consideration as we talk about vacancies and slot utilization. It's really hard to continue to send families to sites that are struggling to retain them.
And it seems like that, I'm just going to jump on Molly's comment. That seems like it would be very important for the division, given the unfavorable press related to Preschool Promise slots. And part of it is goodness of fit, either because of the quality of the program or the location of the program. If we want those numbers to change, we need to be responsive to what the family feedback is. And to some of the quality in this last expansion that is not actually very high quality.
Actually, I'll jump on there too, Renee. I was thinking pretty much the same thing in light of the recent press. Anything that we can do as a coordinated enrollment system, and that means the hubs, that means the ELD, and that means the providers. You know, we have got to make sure that we're making good on the public trust for these spaces. And I know we have a program here that is possibly not going to be a program or is thinking about moving, and just sort of like, how do we take care of all 36 kiddos? And then also, like, what happens to all those slots? And, you know, I know that there was an FAQ document that said there wasn't going to be a reallocation, but that's a potential for those. We've got some others that have also turned back some of their slots. So where are those slots going? And I think that's a very important thing for us all to be on the same page about. I also, and this is just sort of riffing on what I think has already been said, but I'm just excited, Cassandra and Mel, for you all in your role to internally within the division, specifically as it relates to Preschool Promise and Head Start and OPK. I think there is a vision for coordinated enrollment, and I'm 100% there for it. And all of the other programs also need to be there for it as well. And keeping that in alignment at the state policy level is going to be really key and critical.
Something else that just came to my mind that I feel like I should share is we're totally acknowledging that that you, Cass and Mel, have just inherited coordinated enrollment. Serena is committed to fixing it and being responsive and accountable. I think those were her words. And I just want to really acknowledge that your subject matter experts are the people on this call. That there is no expectation that the three of you will have answers that the rest of us don't already have, like pre-formed suggestions for how we might move forward, but we can't make it happen. And so as we are asking questions, normally many of us also have potential solutions. We just need the format to be able to bring those forward and then to execute on those. So we really, all of us on this call really want to be part of the solution rather than just dumping all the problems on you. We want this to succeed. It needs to succeed better than it is. And we can be your partners with that.
Thank you, Renee. That means a lot. And Lisa, thank you. You've always been such a good partner to me in this work from day one. So I'm very happy to hear those comments. And so are all of you others that I've worked with too. Everyone's been a great partner. And I feel like it's just a time for us to have some of those conversations of why things haven't been working. And if it's on the division side, what can we do to improve? If it's lack of information sharing, hopefully we can create more space like this. I think that the shared site that Sky mentions that she desires to have all the FAQs of what's going on and happening, people can, utilize that as a strong tool. I feel like that would be one of the very first steps of this. Well, except for me reading all the documents first. I think that's first, and then the other stuff. But really bringing coordinated enrollment to a higher level at the Chief of Programs unit, I think will allow us to look at this system across all of our programs, to Lisa's point, so that it isn't just stalling or staying in one spot. I think that is the key, really. And so I know that Serena and Alyssa feel that way too. And I was able to get copies of the comments that that you have provided to Serena and Alyssa when she reached out to folks, or when they reached out to folks. And so I'm capturing those as well and taking those into consideration as we move this work forward. As you know, we are about 100 days away from becoming DELP, and I just want this to go as well as we can. So I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, work extra hard. Mel's going to be getting out into reaching out to all of you soon, and we're going to be looking at what times might work best for a visit. And I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit on, would you like a cohort visit? Do you want an individual hub visit where I could come out or meet with partners virtually or in person with your community partners? However you vision this work, because in your community, it's unique and specific. And I want to make sure that I am not, in my efforts to be across the board and de-silo, I also want to be sensitive to the uniqueness. So tell me what you want to hear and what you want to see and what you need, and I'm going to do the very best I can to mill through all that and figure it out with Mel. And Serena and Sherry, who I think Sherry left the meeting too. So, but thank you for this time. I do want to say that, and I am willing to take any more questions. I think we have just a couple minutes, so.
Ask one question we were wondering about is, we're really excited to have the manual be a 2-year document. And there's some concerns around with all of the FAQs that come out and questions that come out over even just a year, how well those are going to be able to be captured and really maintained for 2 years, and making sure that we have an idea of how to be able to track all of the changes or updates or clarification that does come out over 2 years. And so just wanting to be mindful of how that's going to look for our coordinated enrollment staff and anybody new that comes on board as we're moving through this process.
So what I hear is that these manuals go for their 2 years. They have a review process every 2. That's
They've been annual until this year,
Annual.
and this year's one is for 2 years.
okay.
What we've seen is over even just a year period, some of our Q&As and FAQs, we've had, I don't know, 8, 10 or more different documents that have come out with clarifications, answers to questions, changes in policy, different pieces that have added on. And instead of being added into the manual, we would have to review several documents to hopefully be able to find an answer to how we should be moving forward in different situations. And if we missed an email somewhere, then that information is just lost and we could be doing it incorrectly or not sharing it with new staff. And so that can get really complex and can provide potentially wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur with everything Athena's saying. So I don't know if it needs to be addendums that are sent out to be stapled to the coordinated enrollment manual. I mean, that would be kind of the easiest solution. Even better would be to resend the manual, probably with sections highlighted, like changed as of this date, yellow marking, so that it stands out. This is a new version. Please use this, because I don't believe the coordinated enrollment, the coordinated enrollment manual is translated into other languages. I believe it's just available in English. So it's nice. Shouldn't be like, I know that one of the explanations for not changing the application, preschool promise enrollment. I know we were talking about coordinated enrollment manual and I got confused. The reasons for not changing the application mid-year, even when we noticed fields that were kind of missing or problematic, was that, you have to have them translated and rolled out officially, and that takes a long time. But for the manual, since it is kind of an internal document, it seems like that could just be added to, like Athena's talking about, so that it is one piece. And we could just print off the latest version for new staff or things like that. And then I was going to say one other concern I have about the preschool promise enrollment manual is that every year when we meet collaboratively with our Head Start OPK partners, and we're trying to do that higher level coordinated enrollment work, every year they ask us questions about preschool promise eligibility and enrollment procedures. And it's clear to us, and they tell us, we have not received the manual. We don't have the application. We have never been given instruction on how to do this. So I have a lot of concerns about how our Head Start and OPK partners that also have preschool promise slots are not being included in trainings, meetings, emails, discussions. I think what may be happening, I don't think it's being done intentionally, but I think what may be happening is that information may be sent to whoever's name is on the grant, but that contract, procurement person at the school district, it could be a huge organization or a huge private center. They're not passing it on to the coordinator of that site, or even more important, perhaps the same thing happens with the grant manual with the actual educators in the classroom. They don't know what preschool promise requirements are. So there's a disconnect with information from ELD flowing down to everyone who needs to have that information. So I end up having to forward the manual to our partners every year. Here's your reference guide that you need to have because we're supposed to be doing this the same way.
Yeah.
I remember one year they were not taking, I think it was WIC. Maybe they hadn't heard. We were partway through the year and they had never heard that WIC could be used to qualify for preschool promise. And they said, "Oh, it can," and they had been doing it differently the whole year, or they'd been using an old application instead of the new one that had come out. So I'm not sure why that's happening, but that's another big communication disconnect.
Okay. And as I'm new, so please forgive me if I'm out of pocket, but like, I'm just asking, are these questions that you bring up during preschool promise hour, office hours with Dana and the other team? Or, I mean, do these questions get shared here and there? Like I'm documenting them and I'm going to go back and ask them about some of these things, right? But like, I'm just wondering, do these types of questions get elevated in those spaces as well?
Yes, we have brought several of these questions up during office hours and during cohort meetings. And often the responses will get back to you and we haven't yet heard a response. And so I think this is really an opportunity to elevate some of those questions where we haven't received responses.
Okay.
And
you mean about preschool promise, right? That you didn't.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, the chat is running rampant right now and I'm doing my best to keep up. But what I would say is there's a couple things in there about working on that there's a commitment level for a communication plan that would be very beneficial and helpful. And maybe it looks like Jessica was willing to talk to me a little bit more about it. So when we're done with this meeting, I'll have a moment to kind of catch up on the chat and make sure that I've gotten back to everyone that I need to. I'm committed to reading the Preschool Promise Enrollment Manual and finding out about the other coordinated enrollment materials. I love hearing that it might be nice to have one space instead of when these amendments come out that you don't want them in your various inbox and in various emails across scattered when you're looking for something quickly. That doesn't seem very helpful for you or for a family. So that'll be one thing that I look at right away as how we're sharing that information. And I also heard earlier that there was an opportunity, or somebody said that you would be getting a meeting set up that would go over those changes and what they look like and where they're at. So Mel, I think that one marching order that we got today was that we need to get that meeting set up and help people navigate that and make sure that we're learning who those people are that need to be at the table. That's the other thing I'm hearing, is that possibly we're not getting the communications out broadly enough. So let's try and Sky, if you wouldn't mind sending me a note that said, I'll just reach out to you separately. Never mind. I'll reach out separate and we'll talk about making sure I understand more about who you need this information to go to. And then we can start working on a meeting to pull everyone together. And that way we don't let everyone, or we don't miss anyone.
Well, I mean, I also wonder, is it just a matter partly of just including, maybe this is where I guess you have to think through that coordinated enrollment versus preschool promise and which meetings are which and who needs to be at which, because I've always thought it interesting that, the Head Start OPK partners are not a part of those preschool promise meetings. So not getting that information updates, because I understand the idea that, they are still free to process applications or place children in their own way. But they do still have to comply with the same eligibility for preschool promise. And so it does seem, maybe it's a special meeting that's a combo of Head Start, OPK, and preschool promise. I don't know. It could get huge. That's another problem, but yeah, it's a tricky one.
I think it has to be. I think we are like kind of muddling preschool promise to coordinated enrollment, because yes, preschool promise, we have our own program, but coordinated enrollment, not just eligibility, but when, you know, we're moving more towards, you know, we have our teams that we're playing with, our ESD, our CCRNR, our Head Start, and our private programs that we're meeting with. But it's hard for us to kind of come to the table and say, let's coordinate, when we ourselves don't have a timeline from the ELD, when now our Head Starts are already filling slots for 23, 24, but we don't even know where our slots are going to be, who our provider, where our grantees are going to be, our slots being reallocated. So, but yeah, it's still separating the coordinated enrollment from preschool promise enrollment.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I hate to ask, you know, for larger meetings, because those are even more difficult to enable discussion, information sharing. But, you know, kind of going back to what Lisa was saying about setting the standard from the top, from the division, that not only do hubs need to engage Head Start and OPK partners and coordinate enrollment, but Head Start and OPK entities need to engage with their hubs, and it needs to be a collaborative effort where we're sharing information and aligning timelines. And you know, some of these things that have been challenging for us as hubs to communicate to our partners, you know, the fact that we do have to respect family choice, and even though the family might be eligible for Head Start as well, they choose preschool promise because it's a longer day or better location or whatever it is. Like, some of that is it's kind of we've obviously moved through it, and we have good relationships with our Head Start OPK partners, but it would have been nice if that more of that messaging had come from the top, if you will, that the state is saying, this is the principle under which preschool promise operates, and we want to communicate that and back hubs up in the way that they're implementing it, so that there isn't the tension and those feelings of competition.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is Mel. There's a lot of really valuable information in the chat. So
I know.
I realized early on I couldn't keep up with it. So you and I will just go back after the fact and be all encompassing.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of what someone was saying earlier, you know, the two of you are, it is a pretty complex and thorny endeavor that you are both taking on. So we appreciate your patience and willingness to work on this. I think it's just, you know, like Renee was saying, we have been doing it for a few years now, and so we're very passionate about it, and we want it to be good. We want it to be successful. And so when we see gaps in the system or lack of communication, we can become frustrated because we just feel like we could achieve so much more. And so it's not directed at either of you, but more just us really taking the opportunity to voice everything that we would like to see.
Yeah, Sky, I appreciate that. And also, I appreciate the comments about having leadership decision makers at the table when we have these discussions. Today, we originally set this meeting as a meet and greet. I didn't really plan on doing any decision making today. So Molly and Renee, I do appreciate your comments in the chat. And yes, that is what we're trying to get to. And that's the main reason why we got moved into the deputy director's office team. So we are paying attention to your comments and trying to make that a better line of decision making so that things don't get bottlenecked. And I appreciate you raising that again in the chat. Are there any other questions or anything that you think that Mel and I should know about today, so that when we meet again, that we can have some things under our belt that you've asked about today, and then also start creating some of those pathways to do this, as someone said, sticky work together. So anybody else? So I do want to show my screen, and we will share the slides shoot, maybe I'll just send them out. That might be faster so we can see each other on the call. But the slides definitely just have all of our contact information on it, so it's readily available. There's also document that we will, or it's documented that we will get back to you within 48 to 72 hours when you send emails into the coordinated enrollment inbox. At a minimum, it will be initial response just to make sure that you know that your question was received. And as we work forward on the FAQ and where that lives and how we want to, as a group, decide where that should go, we'll be continually providing that feedback back to you until we land on what that looks like and we can get a shared site of some sort set up. That'll be some IT stuff. And as we're transitioning to Delk, I might have to say that getting that site might take a little bit of time, but we can do something in the short term with a plan to get that light turned on after July 1 for a shared site. But in the meantime, we'll look for something that will serve that purpose. Any other questions?
Yes, well, hopefully individuals are thinking of another question. We would love to hear more. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It sounds like the most immediate need right now is for a conversation regarding some clarification for the new Preschool Promise grant manual. Is that a correct assumption from my part? That sounds like that's the most immediate need.
Mel, I think just like a Q&A, like the place to send questions in would be helpful with that. As we've read through the preschool, the enrollment manual, there's some questions that popped up. And so if definitely that would be important.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that. Jesse, please go ahead.
Awesome. Can we get an ELD like org flowchart or a new one at this point? I don't know if that's already in the works. I'm noticing that when things come up related to who to ask at ELD, whether it's internally or externally, I don't know for sure. So I would love flowchart and quick contact info.
And maybe along with that, because I like Jesse's idea, that would be helpful, but also maybe if somewhere on that chart, it could say, specific emails. Maybe it could say, if you have questions about this, contact this person or send it to this address. And if grantees have questions about X, send it to this address, because we often field a lot of those questions. Just this morning, I got one from a grantee about their per child funded amount and whether that's going to change for next year. And, I thought about, trying to do the research for them and compile that information and write back. And I was like, nope, I need to direct them to the ELD. That's outside my scope. That's something that they need to handle, so just knowing, should that go to a specific person? Should that go to the programs team? Because there is a lot of confusion from grantees about who they're supposed to go to for different things. Yeah, good point, Jesse. Also, we're told that, families have the right to appeal an application decision. There could be concerns or complaints. And if those aren't coming from us, well, where should we send those? And then also where should families go with those concerns and complaints as well? So just a general communication roadmap.
I don't know if one of us answered yet, but yes, we can work on that if we didn't.
Absolutely. We can get you some kind of a flow chart. And when you have, like I said, as we work through this and develop the FAQ and the space where it lives, I think that the one thing that we'll all be learning from each other is, where is this information and how do we best keep those doors of communication open? So that sounds like one of the biggest things that we have to work on, but it also sounds like something very attainable. So Mel and I will put our thinking caps on about how to expedite this to make sure that we're getting back to you the information that you need in a timely manner. and then work on the system of how to keep it sustainable so that everybody knows where that information is, as well as if you have a question, who the right people are to contact, both internally and externally. I'm hearing that loud and clear.
And along the lines of what Cass just mentioned, this is Mel. If anyone needs access to the ELD Coordinated Enrollment SharePoint site, please reach out to me. I communicate with our IT team weekly. And so anybody who's having access problems or any issues with that or need access, please just send me an email, and then I can take care of that on our side.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, and I just want to say thank you again for your patience as Mel and I take on this new work. I realize that it's important work. It's a big lift. There's a lot of moving parts as well as partners. And I will say that hopefully with moving into the Chief of Programs office team, that this will get you the attention and the answers that you need more timely, and that we can all work together across teams internally and externally to make this a success. Because I know, and I can hear by the comments and how you're all involved in the work, that it means a lot to you. And I know that for Oregon, if we can make this happen, our families and our children will thrive. So that said, I really appreciate everyone's time today. I know you had to probably move around a couple things to make this meeting. We did record the meeting for those who were not able to come today. We will be getting that information, contact out to you about when we can come visit, getting those set up. We'll work on an agenda with each one of you to see if there's partners that you want us to meet while we're doing those site visits, friendly visits, or whatever. And then we will also report back, I think is really important about like what we're doing in each spot, so that as partners, you know what's happening as well. And then maybe that will spur something else that you want to see happen. Anyway, I really appreciate your time, and you have 3 minutes to maybe go get a cup of water, or I'll do a little walk around so until you're 2 o'clock. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a great day. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.